Welcome to the Real Freedom Podcast, where we inspire you to pursue your passion to gain time and financial freedom through opportunities in real estate. I'm your host, Mike Swenson. Let's get some real freedom together. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Real Freedom Podcast, where we talk about building time and financial freedom through opportunities in real estate. And I love people who love to think against the grain, who love to disrupt the industry, who love to challenge kind of the traditional ways of thinking and find a different pattern. And so today we've got a wonderful guest for you, Ralph DiBugnara, and he's going to talk about lots of different things in real estate. You've got a lot of stuff going on. So just a quick background here: serial entrepreneur, real estate expert, Wall Street Journal best-selling author of your book, The Growth Trap. You've worked in the mortgage industry, so president of Home Qualified, digital resource for buyers and sellers, vice president of Cardinal Financial, a mortgage loan company. You funded over $40 billion in loans, have a real estate portfolio over $20 million. And then you have a series called The Real Estate Disruptors, amongst other things that you're doing a lot of community efforts. And so you've just got your hand in a lot of different things. And so we'll talk about kind of how you see opportunities in the market, work on them, and really change your family tree as well, because, you know, you grew up struggling financially. And so now you've built a great life for yourself. So we'll talk about that as well. So welcome to the show, Ralph.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, just share a little bit more, expand on your background and how you got to where you're at.
So I've been in, I started in mortgages in 2001, kind of because I couldn't find a job doing anything else. Although when I graduated college, there was only really sales jobs. And I was selling copiers door to door, and a friend pulled me into the mortgage business, and I figured I'd give it a try. But it was great for me because it enabled me to buy my first property at 23. I just kind of had the wrong strategy the first time around with real estate. So between like 2001 and 2008, I was buying and I was working in it. And by 2008, just not knowing enough and following the wrong trends and just like ignorance, ignorance of youth and pride and everything else. I lost everything almost in 2007, 2008. I lost my job. I lost my money. I went from living in a penthouse on Wall Street to a studio apartment in an outer borough of New York. And it was dark at the time, but it was, when I look back on it now, it's kind of where I draw all my experience and my strength from. That was really the foundation of it, to kind of go through that experience and tear it all the way down and have to build it all the way back up again. And then, from 2008 to about 2013, I rebuilt my mortgage business, and it's probably where I got my most momentum in this business. So when people talk to me about what's currently going on in the market, I don't think it's anywhere near the same thing as 2008, but I also feel like it's a real opportunity for people to grow because there's less people in the market now, right? Like there's less competition. So I think it's a great time to enter, even though it's going to be harder. Then between 2013 and 2000 and now, I've kind of built my real estate portfolio back up, built the mortgage business back up with my partners. We did about $2 billion last year in mortgages. This year will be a lot less, but we'll still be over $1 billion. And it's just kind of riding the wave of real estate, right? And that's really what it is. It's learning that it's a cycled market, and you just have to kind of be prepared for what those cycles are.
Talking about kind of the disruption aspect, because, I grew up in a family where it was, get a good job, have your W-2, save for your retirement. And that's kind of how I was wired in my thinking. And even in real estate, there's people who like to kind of do the things the way that they've always been done, follow the pattern that's already been done in the past. And, somebody who likes to disrupt things sees different opportunities where other might see it, or is rocking the boat a little bit. So talk about that aspect for you, how you've been able to find those opportunities. And you said you had it, you've lost a lot of it, and then you were able to build it back up. Doing that versus going back to something that's considered more safe, stable. So I'd love to hear just kind of your thoughts on that a little bit more.
Yeah, and I have a similar background to you. My father was a teacher, and he, had the same job forever, and he still has the same job. He still teaches. And, when I first got into the workforce, I thought that's what it was, right? You go work for one company, you work there for your whole life, you get a pension, you retire, you kind of move on. Mm-hmm. And I was almost forced into entrepreneurship, but I think that's what my spirit was always, that I always wanted to do. But even when I was doing well in one business, I was always looking to do something else. And I think with that, real estate's been a really good catalyst for everything else I try to do, because after going through what I went through with real estate, I really look at it as a long-term investment always now. I always look at it, try to 3 to 5 years down the road. And either how do I sustain it 3 to 5 years down the road, or how can I exit it 3 to 5 years down the road? So I look at business and life that way too, in general, whereas I never get too high, I never get too low. You know, when the market was great the last couple of years and there was a lot more money flowing and there's a lot more opportunity to buy, I thought of it in a long-term place. You know, if I buy this property or these properties, how does that help me long-term? Does this push me more towards what my ultimate goal is, where I want these properties to sustain my lifestyle without having to work a job eventually? So, and I don't know if I'll ever not work, because I think I like working, but that was my goal. So when I look at it now, and I look at my portfolio now, for the Airbnb stuff, for the short-term rental stuff I own, it's still doing pretty well. And for the long-term rental, I know, as you know, you've kind of seen the markets, right? In 2007, 2008, the one thing that was consistent is rent still went up. So as a long-term real estate owner, I'm not somebody who flips a lot of properties. I'm not somebody who really is in and out of transactions that fast. I look at it as a very stable lifestyle, even in a bad market, as long as I'm thinking into the future, and I'm not making decisions in the now every single time.
And having your hands in a few different businesses, you're able to kind of sit at the cockpit and look at the levers on the different gears, you know, the different things that you have. And based on the market changes, you can decide to dial something up, dial something back, shift something a little bit. And so where some people might see this as risky because you're doing lots of different things, or maybe your time and attention is divided, you don't have the ability to kind of tweak the dials based on how the market changes, and yet you're still in the real estate market. So it's you've taken all that you've learned and were able to build and capitalize on it, but now you can kind of shift things in a shifting market.
Yeah, and I think that's a really, really good point. And I think right now, in every piece of it, right, I think that my mindset right now is that in a market where there's going to be less people probably over the next couple of years, because it's gotten a little harder, right? And in a market where it's a little bit unstable and uncertain, and we don't know what's going to happen next, these are always the cycles that I've made the most progress in for the future. So my goal right now is that where profit margins are almost down across the board on every funnel that I'm in, right? Every business that I'm in, this is if I work consistently through this, and I work to grow these businesses in not a great market, when I come out of this, I'll have a lot of momentum. And as hard as that is some days, when you come in and the stock market's down and real estate's down and interest rates are up and all this stuff, right? I think if I look at it in a place where all I'm trying to do today is build something that's going to give me momentum in the future, you know, that really keeps me going in every one of the businesses. And I think that's the key right now is to just keep your momentum going.
Let's touch on the investment piece a little bit, because I know a lot of our listeners are curious as you think about building your investment portfolio, and everybody has a different story. So I want to dig into that a little bit. Talk about, you know, you'd gotten your first properties, you built it, the market changed, you lost it. We've talked about you kind of have a specialty here in short-term rentals and doing Airbnb. So just kind of talk about that path of your investment properties and growth.
Yeah. So the first time I went through it, I got on I got on maybe not the best trend between 2003 and 2008. Like I got in smart, right? I bought a multifamily first, and that did really, really well for me. And I sold it, and I had a profit, and I started buying properties in a Florida market at the time, which was really a market that you could buy pre-construction properties in an area that was being built up all over the place. And a lot of the times even sell those pre-construction properties before they were finished. Like that was a big trend there. So I was like, oh, this is great. Even though I have no track record in it, I have no history in it, and there's not a lot of history in it in general, because it was really, in that time period, something new that people were doing for the most part, right? And I did it a few times, and it was great, and then I kept doing it, and at the end of it, I got caught holding the bag on a bunch of properties, because I bought properties in 2005 and 2006 that weren't going to be finished until 2008 or 2007. By the time they were finished, they were worth 30% of what I paid for them. So, I learned a lot in doing that. And when I started to rebuild it, I was like, all right, well, I have to have a piece of my portfolio that's always stable. So historically, what's stable, right? Long-term rental properties, whether they be single family or multifamily properties, are pretty stable over time because rent always goes up, right? So if I can get something that it may, and those properties, in my experience at least, you're not going to make a ton of money monthly on them. But I want to make I try to look at real estate investments where I want to make between 10 and 15% return on investment. So I look at cap rates, but if I put $100,000 into a property, I want to make $10,000 a year on that property. And I want to try to be out of that investment, depending on the type of investment it is. So on my short-term rental properties, when I look at them now, I want to be out. I want to have my money back within 5 to 7 years. On my longer-term things like multifamilies, I'm okay with 8 to 10 years. So that's how I look at things as is this a good investment or not a good investment? So when I first started building it again, I was like, all right, I'm going to look at the stuff that's 10 years, 8 to 10 years, multifamilies. I don't make a lot of money monthly on them, but equity-wise, over time, they appreciate and they're income producing and great. Just let them function. And then, 2018, 2019, I started looking at the short-term of the Airbnb market. And then, especially when COVID hit and everything shut down, and I was sitting in this office by myself most days, and I had a lot of time to concentrate on it, I really started to look at that market. And I looked at it. I always try to look what is the advantage in the market today? And that market, it was a low interest rate market, right? So I was like, I can buy properties for a really, really cheap monthly expense right now. I'm going to go do that. So I can take more risk on the property because I'm going to have less risk on my monthly payments. So that's when I started kind of really going full force towards the Airbnb market because the payments were so low comparatively, right? I could make my money back quicker on that stuff. And if they didn't have to have a 10-year cycle, they may only have to have a 5-year cycle. So I started looking at things that way. And that was the advantage I saw there. And I started running towards that. And, over that period between 2019 and early 2022, late 2022, even, I bought between like 12 and 15 short-term rental properties that were mostly in vacation areas. And the thing I liked about those properties at the time, and I still like that market, just not the same exact way, is that I was making enough monthly on some of them where I could use the money to leverage and buy something else. And that's kind of what I did. And when I found markets that were appreciating fast and the Airbnb income was good, I tried to buy multiple properties in those markets. So that's it's different strategies based on markets. And when I look at the market today, it's a little confusing to me, if I'm being honest with you, whereas I don't know where the next thing is coming. I think there's definitely some opportunity in the commercial market right now, or there's going to be over the next 3 to 6 months. And I think in Airbnb, there's some opportunity because vacation areas are the one market that I'm seeing consistently where the prices have come down. Because I think the first thing people sell is, right, what is a luxury item for us? Well, it's our second home. Okay, well, let's get rid of our second home. So, but it hasn't decreased in renters. As a matter of fact, you may even get more renters there because if people sell their second homes, they may become renters in those markets if they want to go back. So I think there's an opportunity in short-term rental markets and vacation areas right now. And I'm looking in those markets as a buyer if I can find stuff that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And I believe too, the market, you obviously want to pick a market that makes sense, but in terms of saturation of a market, if you're able to do something really well, you should be able to rise through the noise. And where people might get pushed out in those markets are the people that, haven't really, we talk about in short-term rental, like you're in the hospitality business. And so people that don't really get that, they don't have great photos. It's not decorated well. They just think if I slap my property on there, people are going to sign up. But if you take a strategic approach, you should be able to cut through kind of those average players in those market, regardless of how saturated it can be.
1,000%. I think you have to change your mindset, right? As a landlord and you're literally a hotel concierge. You're a hospitality person at this point, and you have to think. You have to create an experience in the home. It has to be the properties I buy. I want to make sure that they're in areas that are desirable to be in. Whereas there's attractions in the area that bring people there that are not my house. My best houses, as far as income purposes, aren't necessarily my nicest houses. They're the areas that have the most to do because people don't spend a lot of time in the house. They're out at the restaurants and the bars and the beaches and the lakes or whatever it is. So you have to change your mindset a little bit around that. And I've had to learn. It's been a learning experience. It definitely hasn't been easy, but it's been a learning experience. But now we're in a good rhythm, and most of my properties were on the platform for 2 or 3 years, and now I'm getting return guests, and that really changes. People keep asking me, like, is your Airbnb income up this year? It is not a significant amount where I'm like, it's up 30%. No, it's probably up 5 to 10%, but it's really because of return guests, more experience in the market. So I understand when to adjust prices and not to adjust prices. I understand cycles better. This is a hot month. This is a cold month. This is a dead month. And so I understand kind of where to take advantage of things and where to not worry about things. And I think with short-term rental property specifically, it takes about 12 months to understand your home.
And I do think in terms of balancing kind of the long-term rentals that you have, apartment complexes, multifamily, mixed with short-term rental, it's a good diversification technique, because you get the long-term play, the safe, stable, mixed with a little bit of, what's hot, what's happening right now. And once again, we kind of talked about, as markets change, you're able to adjust those dials a little bit, but being in both of those together, I think provides a good mix.
Yeah, it gives me a good balance. It's good for my mind, where I don't have to worry about certain properties. Like, is this property going to not rent this month? Whereas the Airbnb, anything can happen. I had a property in Florida that happened again. It's been hit by like 3 storms this year. So, that's an unpredictable thing. But the property does very, very well. So I'm dealing with it right now. And, I try to buy in areas where I can control the majority of the costs and the variables. So if I can buy in an area that has low taxes and low insurance, it's ideal, because that's a variable that I can't necessarily control, but it's stable enough where I can adjust if it changes so much. So like, I'll use Florida again, because it's just a good example right now. The insurance costs in Florida are through the roof right now. It's almost a crisis there at this point, where people are having huge issues there with insurance. And I have a bunch of properties down there, and it's become more of a problem over the last 4 or 5 years. But when people ask me where to buy and they bring that up, I'll hesitate a little bit, just because insurance costs. I think there's ultimately going to be a fix there, because the government's starting to address it. But it's a big variable. My insurance costs went up in an already high market in 2023, another 20 to 30% in some markets. That's a huge variable. Like, that's not a variable you want to build a business around. So it's just something to kind of look at the market, what's going on in that market, specifically when you're buying properties.
So out of curiosity then, for people that have a dozen properties plus, like you, in the short-term space, how much are you hands-on versus working through like a property manager, co-host, something like that? How much are you hands-on versus hands-off?
Good question. So I have enough at this point where we manage everything in-house. But even managing everything in-house, so I have somebody somebody in-house who handles the accounting, the bookings, and who manages the maintenance people and the cleaners. So I have basically three people who kind of full-time work on that stuff. As long as you have a good cleaner and a good handyman in a market that you're not in, you're fine, right? If you have a good cleaner will take pictures of the property before and after somebody's there. A good maintenance person can be at the property within a few hours. As long as you have that, I think you can manage. I really truly believe at this point you can manage a property everywhere. That it's no problem. And as long as so I'm hands-on to that point, overall picture. Hey, do we have our key elements in each of these markets? Okay, great. And you're going to go through vendors, and you're going to go through, handymen. You're going to go through. You're going to have to find new people, and cleaners. You're going to have to find new people. But with those two stable people in each market, I think you can manage property anywhere.
Let's touch on your book here. So the Growth Trap. Talk about the inspiration behind that, and then talk about the content here of what people need to hear from you.
Yeah. So, this is something that I wrote during again, COVID. I was in my office with some free time in my hands, and I started writing, but it's really a story about my life in this business, and it really mostly in this business, and these kind of growth traps that I've gotten myself into. And a growth trap is basically, between the ages of like infancy and like 18, we get bigger, we get stronger, we get smarter. We really learn very, very easily. And then we get to a point, and for me, it was earlier than that, but we get to a point in life where it stops becoming easy. And some people don't push through. Like, we get to a point where it becomes hard to learn, or hard to grow, or hard to get past an obstacle. And a lot of us quit. Growth traps are kind of continuous through life. Like, they never end. Like, we're in one now, right? Like, this is something I could show up today. And I was like, this market sucks, and I don't want to do this today. And like, I'm going to go find something else to do. And I have to recognize that I'm stunting my own growth. And the book really talks about a lot of stuff I've gone through in that way in real estate, and how I came up with things to kind of get by it, and a mindset I try to stay in to kind of get through those traps that we continuously face for the rest of our lives.
Yeah. I think, there's a lot of people in real estate that, they try to just stay in one lane. And I know for me, I went from being on the admin side to starting my own team to working with investors. And I feel like I'm constantly learning, and it's like, you have to stay active. You can't just get stuck on the way that things have been. And I know there's a lot of, topic in just kind of residential real estate, or even, like you've got these large iBuyers coming in and buying properties, and agents are concerned about their commissions getting shrunk, or, different things and how that's working. And I see a lot of people just being reactive to these rules and regulations are out there that are putting me in a box. And you've got to find ways to stay relevant, to stay nimble, to stay agile as things are changing, versus just kind of letting the news come to you and saying, oh, this, we're going to heck in a handbasket now. What are we going to do? Yeah. My commission's being cut. My income's being cut. I guess I'm just stuck. But it's really finding ways to reinvent yourself, push through, be a learner, and be willing to say, I don't know it all, kind of the being the dumbest person in the room mentality. Like, you got to, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. You got to go 100%. Find other rooms to be in to level up.
For sure. Yeah. And that amazing point on life, right? It's like, you got to continue to find ways to grow, and however that's going to be. It's not an easy thing. And I have a friend that locally trains a bunch of NFL guys. And I see them around when I go in the gym, and I see them around the neighborhood now because they're over here because of him. And he says to me, he said 95% of them don't like their jobs. And so think about that, like professional athletes, like you look at them like that's, and they don't like their jobs every day. So I think that all of us can be in a place where I don't want to do this today, and it's never going to be great. And I went through this kind of myself over the summer when I saw that the market was really going the way it is now, right? I was like, do I really want to go through this again? And then I put it into perspective. I was like, I make a good living. I have opportunity every single day. I can pick my kids up from school if I want. I put quality of life into perspective and what this business provides me. And I kind of straightened myself out and said, yeah, stop thinking like that. Like, just go back to be consistent and keep working on it, and appreciate the good things around you and work on the things that are hard. And that's it. And I think that's all we can do.
Real estate agents, are you tired of letting the busyness of your real estate business get in the way of your real estate investing goals and your financial future? I'm excited to announce that we've created the Real Freedom Investor Agent Tribe to help you. We've got a ton of content, educational tools to help accelerate your learning curve and get you on the right path to hit your investing goals. We also have a mastermind tribe of people just like you, agents that want to grow their own portfolio and encourage you and cheer you on along the way, as well as some private one-on-one coaching. So go to realfreedom.com, click on the store, you'll see the options there. We're so excited to be able to help you. I've priced it super low so price can't get in the way, but did want to have some skin in the game for you to help with that accountability. So go check it out, realfreedom.com, click on the store. We're excited to connect with you and excited for you to connect with your tribe of real estate agents investing, trying to build their financial freedom. Yeah, it's a good perspective. I remember hearing a podcast. It was JJ Redick, basketball player in the NBA, and he had a long career, and he was talking about how his off seasons are more difficult than his seasons because he had his routine of, it was something like 300 shots from 8 different spots on the court that he had to make every day. And he's like, and I'm thinking, am I going to go through another year? He's like, well, then that's, what is that, like 2,500 shots made every day? And they're like, well, what is it? He's like, well, I do it from this spot, this spot, this spot, this spot. And that's his routine, is he knows to get better, he has to do that every day. And so, like you said, a lot of times people might think, oh, professional athlete, they've got it made. And he's thinking, no, to stay at the top of the game, the difference between a high level pro athlete and a very good pro athlete, like, you got to be really sharp to get that extra 1% on top to be the starter versus being the reserve. And I know I've even seen it too, where, they got these, average NBA players that'll go out to the playground and just whoop anybody that's out there because they're that much better than everybody else. Yeah.
Yeah. I love his podcast, by the way. And I heard that podcast, and it resonated with me the same way it resonated with you. It's like, it's tough being Tom Brady. It's tough being, every year you have to put this much work in to get to just to function. So I think we just all, and I think the other thing, I use this example a lot. Like, this is like 10 years ago. I've been in a bunch of different businesses, and at some point I thought I wanted to own a pizzeria because it was cash and it was this and it was that, right? So I went to go meet with this guy who owned a pizzeria. He was like, what are you thinking? Run, right? And so if you talk to anybody who's been in the business for a certain amount of time, they're going to be able to tell you all the bad things, more bad things than good things a lot of the times, because it's their daily life. So I think we all just have it, and we have to keep it in perspective.
So then what are you thinking about here for the future, the next couple of years, the market and kind of the businesses that you have? What's going through your head as you think about the future?
Yeah, I think that this is the first year with my mortgage business where we've actually had to replace people with technology, like really replace people's jobs with technology. So it's starting to become more of a reality than before. So I think everything I'm looking at right now, whether I'm buying or it's something that I'm entering in as a business, is this something that can be replaced with technology, and is this something I can make money on with technology? And more than anything, I'm thinking of my mortality in that way. Where is the biggest upside for the next 5 to 10 years? Because if we don't adapt, we die, right? So I just think that I'm already thinking of adaptation to what technology is today, and what's going to be replaced, and what's going to be even more necessary than ever. But I think real estate's a great place to be in general, because an agent's always going to be relevant. Maybe they cut the commission, maybe they don't, but you're always going to need somebody there's always going to be an emotional side to real estate, and you're always going to need somebody to kind of walk you through that. So I think that's a good place to be. I think property management's a great place to be. I don't think that's going anywhere. You can't replace property management with technology. Things break, things go wrong. Owning real estate. So I'm looking along, I think we have to look at things along those lines, because technology is coming fast and furious, and it's going to keep replacing more aspects of our daily life. So where can we excel by one, using it, and two, avoiding things that are going to replace us?
I always go back to the example of when I got into real estate and I was on a team. I was on a team, and it had a couple agents that had been in the business for 20, 25 years. And they talk about, things like, to go find a house, I had to go to my broker's office and look through a book, because they had a book of all the properties that were available. And then every week or two, you'd get an update of the book. Well, that's obviously been replaced, and the agent is still there. And then I think about too, they talk about submitting offers. You would go to an office, and everybody who is submitting an offer on a property was physically there to present the offer, either to the listing agent or to the sellers. And so you'd have to physically go drive to the office to present an offer. And now you're able to write up an offer, submit it, and email it, and you get that fast turnaround time. And so the agent is still there. So it's not all doom and gloom. Like, technology is there for the positive for a lot of people, where yes, jobs might be replaced through technology, but what that does is that frees you up to go do other things and maybe pursue things that you love more than doing whatever your XYZ job is. So it allows you to do more with less and pick and choose where you want to go in your area of specialty.
I think it's an excellent point. I said this to somebody the other day. The people that are willing to use technology to do more will excel more than anybody in this market. The people who are using technology so they can just do less on a daily basis will still, and that's like everything else. The hard workers are the ones that get to the front of the room. People who don't want to do as much don't. I think the same goes to technology, right? If you use it to your advantage to excel, then great. And realtors, when I speak to realtors, and they're like, when do you hire an assistant? When do you hire somebody, a virtual? And I say, when you get to a point where you want to hire somebody to do the things you're doing so you can do more, that's when you hire an assistant. If you're hiring them so you can do less, it'll never be good for your business. And I think the same thing with technology.
I'd love to just quick touch on, because I know you've got your General Disruptor Scholarship program. You have a mentoring program for inner city adults. Would love for you to just kind of share about what you're giving back, how you're helping others.
Yeah, that started during COVID. We were kind of sitting around the office, and I was in a place where there was a lot of protesting and everything else, and I just didn't think my time was best spent by doing that. I think my time is best spent as a resource to people who are trying to access things that I now have access to, because I was a person at some point who just didn't have access to things that I wanted. And I didn't really have any opening doors for me. So we started a scholarship program to help people get licensed as either a real estate agent or a mortgage loan officer. And I try to bring them in and put them into real life situations. I think it's, and I don't want to mess up this whole entire quote, but Confucius has a quote where it's, if you tell me, I'll forget. If you teach me, I'll remember. If you show me, I'll understand. And I really try to run it around that, right? Like, I'm going to tell you, we're going to teach you the right technique, but then I want to put you in physically in the field with a realtor who's experienced, who's going to show you what they actually do day to day, because it's not glamorous every single day. So the program really runs that way. And we've kind of continuously been bringing in people 2 and 3 at a time, where we give them a salary. We help them get licensed over 6 months and then see where they go. And it's been interesting. It's been interesting because, adapting to younger generations and philosophies and finding the right people that kind of fit. But it's been really, really good for me. First of all, it's a good learning exercise for me, myself. And I like being an educator in the field. So it's been good kind of just teaching people what I think the right way to do things is, and to try to avoid the mistakes that I've made.
For people that want to learn more about you and kind of what you're doing, how can they find you? How can they reach out to you?
My website has everything. It has my book. It has my short-term rental course. It has a lot of information on the scholarship program. It's Ralph DiBugnara, DiBugnara.com. And I'm pretty active on Instagram. My handle is Debug. It's DIBUG. And I answer all the DMs. Sometimes it takes me a day or so, but I answer all the DMs there. And I put a ton of real estate content up there. It's basically all I put up there. So if anybody wants information, that's a great place to catch me.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Ralph, for coming on. Just appreciate you sharing and appreciate all that you're doing in the industry and helping others and giving back. That's awesome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me. It was great.